is Tim, and this is Wrestling Unlimited. As a new affidavit filed by Janel Grant regarding her lawsuit against Vince McMahon and WWE sees a new 40-page affidavit detailing even more things about the, I guess you would say, alleged sexual assault and abuse she went through with Vince McMahon, which now gives even more detail on everything that went down with her and Brock Lesnar, and names Nick Khan specifically as not only knowing about everything going on for the most part, but also trying to help to cover it all up. We're going to read some of the excerpts from this new 40-page document that you can't find the link for in the description below, but some of it, I'm going to give you guys a warning right now, is pretty bad. So this first part comes just from the first page as it reads, quote, "I first met Vince on March 23, 2019. During the first meeting, he asked me deeply personal and painful things about my situation. I told Vince that I graduated from law school. Life events happened that humbled my family, including illness and bankruptcy, and left me in a state of survival mode ever since. I told him I was actively looking for employment and unprepared for how hard it would be to even get interviews for a job. I asked him for advice to correct whatever it was that I was doing wrong. I told him that I preferred to live like a ghost than admit that I had no family and struggled with grief, debt, a loss of self-confidence in myself, and a bare-bones support system. Vince pointed out that my ability to be vulnerable was a rare quality, and he emphasized how important it was to continue being vulnerable. He said that he not only wanted to give me a job, but also a life, and that his office would be in touch. Vince later told me that after I left from the first meeting, he walked back to the spot where he spoke, pulled down his pants, and jacked off on the floor." Now, as far as Nick Khan being written by name in all of this, Grant wrote, quote, "In August 2020, Nick Khan was announced as WWE's new president and chief revenue officer. In hindsight, I view Nick's arrival as the moment that my life changed for the worse. My fears about reporting the abuse were realized when I learned from Vince that he put the company's new president, essentially his second in command, on notice of his ongoing sexual conduct with me. Nick never asked me whether the relationship was consensual. Instead, Nick also waited for Vince to finish engaging with me sexually during meetings." Now, Grant would talk about here a little bit how Vince would do those infamous late night meetings, the ones we heard about all the time that went into the wee hours of the morning, but that they would go into the wee hours of the morning because Vince would actually leave the meeting, go back to his apartment or penthouse, whatever you want to call it, have sexual relations with Janel, and then go back to finish the meeting. She continued by writing, quote, "In July 2021, Vince had Brad get me from talent relations, walk me to the executive office, and wait on the other side of the chairman's door while Vince offered me sexually to a WWE talent. I later escorted this talent out of the HQ before any harm could happen." As far as who this talent was, she doesn't name him by name, and there's another talent reference later that she also doesn't reference by name. But she does reference Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, and when speaking about Johnny and being paired with him in talent relations, she does write, quote, "Vincent disclosed as background that Johnny had been demoted from this role years ago due to having an indiscretion, which resulted in, quote, getting a woman under an NDA and $1 million out of Vince's own pocket. Vince added that Johnny owes him for that and that they carefully laid trap when I learned Johnny was being given control over me to engage in the same sexual behaviors for which he had been demoted years earlier." Now, as far as some of the Brock Lesnar stuff that she does mention, she starts off by writing, quote, "Vince continued to advise me as part of the deal to convince Brock to sign a new contract and facilitate the exchange of explicit content with Brock. In or around August 2021, Vince told me, and I believed, that during one of these exchanges, he made a bet with Brock about who could physically rip me open the farthest. As part of this bet, Vince selected an unusually large sex toy and stated that it would be used to show Brock how far Vince could rip me open with it, which he'd mark with a line, then mail to Brock with my DNA still on it. Vince then fulfilled his side of the bet, brutalized me with the toy, and set it aside. He shared that he had an exchange with Brock about sending it to him, but I'm unaware whether the toy was actually sent to Brock." She would then go on to talk about a sexual encounter she had with Vince, basically where Vince wanted to show her what it would be like if she had sex with Brock. That night, Vince beat me mercifully to prepare me for what sex would be like with Brock. Among other things, Vince pinned me down, dragged me around, ripped out my hair, slapped me, and fisted me. Following his beating, Vince would not let me leave his apartment until I agreed that I was okay and not upset by the beating. I dealt with the physical, psychological, and emotional side effects of that beating for days afterwards. She continues writing about Brock, stating, quote, on December 17th, 2021, while WWE was in Illinois for the taping of Raw, I got a text at 4:29 p.m. from a number I didn't recognize, stating, quote, hi, this is Polish Joe, with a kiss emoji. I momentarily froze in confusion before Vince texted me at 4:30 p.m. that, quote, Brock, Polish Joe, is going to text you in a few minutes. I replied to Vince with two questions. Why is Brock texting me? And do I call him Polish Joe? Vince explained on a phone call that Brock was the one who requested my number, and to go along with calling him Joe. He reminded me of the promise that he had made to Brock that I would, quote, do anything, and to give Brock whatever he wants. Vince told me he was excited to see the exchanges between Brock and me and hear the stories as I reported them back to him. Understood that I was expected to sexually engage with Brock directly and report all interactions back to Vince. Vince even provided me with feedback about my first text response to Brock by saying, quote, good text, R.E. Joe, before any subsequent messages were exchanged. On December 31st, 2021, Brock requested something of me that I had never done before, never thought about, and never wanted to do. I felt less than human when I filmed myself urinating for the first time. I felt I had no choice but to comply. On January 2nd, 2022, Brock confirmed his appearance for the Uncastville broadcast, and he also requested that I film myself urinating and send it to him. I obeyed. Now, there's more as far as the Brock Lesnar stuff does go here, and it actually comes in where after Vince asked her to sign the NDA, Vince was still expecting her to do things. But as far as that NDA does go, and things that, Nick Khan was involved with, she wrote, quote, on January 14th, 2022, Vince texted me a picture of a to-do list drafted by Brad, which included instructions for me to resign from WWE, hire an attorney, and finalize the NDA. Vince sent an accompanying voice memo in which he said that he and Nick were ready to, quote, rehome me at a company like NBC or ESPN, and Nick would be the one making the call to their contacts there. On January 24th, 2022, I texted Vince saying, quote, I'm so broken and lost I can't stop crying. Regarding the NDA process, in response, Vince told me that he just booked Brock to perform in a live event at Madison Square Garden on March 5, and that he expected me to have a sexual encounter with Brock while he was in New York for that event. During this time, I continued to sexually engage with male talent at Vince's discretion, including phone calls with Brock and another male talent with whom Vince had previously attempted to orchestrate a sexual encounter with months earlier, both of which I reported back to Vince. Now, again, she never says who these other male talent were. Only male talent she mentions is Brock. She continues by writing, quote, additionally, I continued to sexually engage with Vince through sexual acts, pictures, texts, phone calls, as though nothing had changed. He also continued to monitor my interactions with Brock, saying, quote, I hope you're sharing some of these flaming hot pics with Brock, followed by, send me the dirtiest pics you sent Brock. That's going to put me over the top. As far as the rest of this that she did write about here with the NDA process and stuff, it's more of, I guess you would say, a little more detail into things we already knew as far as how this all went down, like her and Vince sitting in Vince's living room and Vince telling her, oh, I got an attorney that can make problems go away, and then saying, I'll pay you $1 million if you sign the NDA, and then Vince basically threatening her to sign the NDA and trying to push up the date that he told her. First, he said January 30th, then he said January 28th, but the Brock stuff here, I feel, is the worst of it because we're getting more detail. And Brock Lesnar is in what some are considering the biggest match this year at WrestleMania. Some say that Brock versus Oba is the most hyped match they've got this year for WrestleMania 42. So now the big question is, with these new details in this new affidavit, does WWE have to pull Brock? Does WWE have to take action? And do they now not want Brock on TV and subsequently at WrestleMania? So a lot of questions to be answered here. And if we do hear anything further on the backlash from this new 40-page affidavit, which you can find in the description below, and what this could mean for Brock Lesnar and WWE going forward, as last time he was named, they pulled him from TV for 2 years, we'll have it for you right here. Wrestling Unlimited.